Welcome everybody, this is the Microsoft Teams community call. It is June 2021 edition, June 15th. Summer is here for the Northern Hemisphere, obviously, and the Southern Hemisphere heading to the winter season. My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a program manager in the Microsoft 365 platform level, and I've been kind of hosting these calls as well for the past few months. We are doing some changes in the future on these calls, trying to get them more, let's say, engaging for you as well, and more optional, not optional, more important for our audience as well. We're going to talk about that one slightly later today. Now, moving on topics. So first of all, we'll do a quick recap on the news and assets which are available for you to take advantage on the Teams development. We're gonna recap some of the Microsoft build announcements related on Microsoft Teams, and just to make sure that you're up to date on what they are, where they are, how to get started, what are the status of those announcements as well. I'm not going to go through all of the announcements, but the major ones. Then we'll have an optional group photo. Hopefully we'll hit again the 50 attendees who are willing to put their video on, and we'll get a nice group photo in the together mode. And then we have 3 demos starting quarter past the hour. Sebastian's going to start around the Kudos App sample using Teams Activity Feed API in the Microsoft Graph. That's really cool demo as well. And then Satya and Aaron is going to talk about building a digital asset document repository management app for Microsoft Teams. And then as a last demo, Xenia is going to talk about the Microsoft Teams Toolkit V2, which was some of the awesome announcements in the Build 2021 related on Microsoft Teams development. Now, moving on the slides, just a quick recap on the assets which are available for you. We have 2 different YouTube channels. We have the official Microsoft 365 developer video channel, where we're going to have a specific official quotes, official videos, more polished, more provided by our cloud advocates. And then we have the Microsoft 365 community channel, where you will find all of the community call recordings, community demos, all of that stuff from one single location. There's a lot of open source assets available in Office Dev, PnP, Microsoft Graph, and SharePoint GitHub organizations. Please do take advantage of them. A really, really cool content as well. There's sample galleries. We are about to release a unified Microsoft 365 sample gallery quite soon. We're already testing that, or it has been soft launched, but we haven't shared the URL yet. So we're testing that. And the intention here is that we want to make sure that as you are building something for the Microsoft Teams or Microsoft 365 in general, you can easily find a sample where you can get started. So you understand that, oh, this is how I get started, or you can pull down the sample, use it as a starting point, and then adjust based on your business requirements. If you're wondering on there's too many URLs to remember, then there's actually only one of them, which is AKMS M365 PnP, from where you'll find all the relevant information for anything in a Microsoft 365 platform or developer topics. Now, one thing which is kind of a heads up related on a summer break and adjustments or changes in the community calls. So based on a feedback what we actually collected from the community, so meaning you people, we have quite a diverse set of community calls happening in a weird times and different times throughout the month. And what we mean with that one is that, as an example, we have the Graph community call happening on first Tuesday, SharePoint community call on second Tuesday, Microsoft Teams community call on the third Tuesday of every single month. And some of those calls happens on Thursday, Wednesday, some of them happen at 7 a.m., some of them happen at 8 a.m., some of them happen at 9 a.m. And it's really, really difficult for people to understand which calls are happening and when. So based on the learnings what we had with our Microsoft 365 developer call, bi-weekly call happening on Thursday, and the SharePoint Framework community call also targeted for Microsoft Teams, we are now adjusting this slightly. So we're at least combining Microsoft Graph, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams calls to a one unified Microsoft 365 in the engineering call. And what we mean with that one is that in that call, we're trying to target always three engineering-driven demos across either Microsoft Graph, SharePoint, or Microsoft Teams. Now, some of the other calls might get merged on this one as well. We're still having a discussion with Power Apps, Adaptive Cards, and Identity calls potentially getting merged on this Tuesday call as well. So having a more consistent way of having these community calls always at 8 a.m. on Tuesdays every single time, every 8 a.m. Pacific time. And that will give you then an insights when it's happening, so you can book the time, or you can choose, of course, always check the recording afterwards, which is a completely valid option as well. So key here is really around the consistency for providing things. And thank you, somebody's clapping on the room. Cool. So we have not yet finalized this plan. We're still having discussions, for example, with the identity call, adaptive card calls, and Power Apps call. It might be that some of these calls remain independent, and then we'll just communicate that clearly. But at the same time, at least SharePoint, which is the content and app development model for Microsoft Teams, and the Microsoft Graph, which is the API layer for both Microsoft Teams and SharePoint, is going to be combined as a one unified call, which happens in every single Tuesday. A lot of calls, but the key here is also that we will provide you a lot of content, a lot of new demos, a lot of information. So making sure that you are up to date what's happening within the Microsoft 365, because in the end, it's a one unified platform rather than individual products and individual services. So that's basically the thinking in here. Now, we will release a blog post on this one relatively soon, this week or next week, as long as we get every single call owner confirmed on the situation. Now, quick update also on other community areas. One thing what we're executing is the Sharing is Caring initiative, and I will let actually David to talk about this one briefly.
Excellent. Thank you, Vesa. Well, friends, the Microsoft 365 community is open and available to you with all kinds of tools and resources that you can use and contribute back to. But we understand that there can be some hurdles, such as where do I get started? How do I utilize these tools? If I want to contribute back, how do I navigate GitHub? The Sharing is Caring program provides hands-on, safe space, inclusive opportunities and sessions for you to learn how to do a variety of these things. You can see the spectrum of upcoming session topics, so we won't cover those in detail. But I did want to highlight that there is an Ask Me Anything coming up in July, specifically devoted to Teams development with Bob German and Victor Willen. So feel free to register for any and all these. As again mentioned, safe space. We don't record them, so it's a great opportunity to ask any question you'd like in an inclusive environment, and we'd love to see you. aka.ms/sharing is caring. Vesa, back to you.
Thank you, David. Thank you. And as we're saying always, but these calls and guidances are getting a lot of great feedback from all of the attendees. So if you don't feel comfortable enough of getting started on consuming or contributing in the community, please check out and join one of these. And if you're interested on contributing more or consuming the assets which are available. Now, a few other updates before we go to the updates from Build. So just a reminder on our Microsoft 365 Extensibility Lookbook. This is really intended to help you to know all of the different extensibility options which we have in the Microsoft 365. So making it really easy for you to say, hey, Microsoft Teams have all of these X amount of ways of extending that, and then you can easily deep dive more detailed on the documentation, videos, and assets around the specific areas. It also have business scenarios and presentations related on what can be built using Microsoft Teams and Microsoft 365 platform. So really showcasing the art of possible. So please have a look on that one and give us feedback around it. We also have a really nice set of Microsoft Teams samples already available, which we are collecting together with Microsoft Engineering, so product group and cloud advocates to a single location. Ultimately, this is going to be available in the unified Microsoft 365 sample gallery, but already right now, you can go to the AKMS Teams samples and then you search and filtering to find the relevant sample for you. Something also really cool, which we announced quite recently from the Yo Teams side of the house. So if you are building your stuff using Yo Teams, there is now a new PnP Teams Quickstart available from AKMS PnP Teams Quickstart. And this really demonstrates the speed of building, deploying, and running Teams application in minutes using the Yo Teams technology. And this is really about code spaces and a few other things behind of the scenes, led by Victor Willen, who quite recently actually moved to Microsoft as well. Now, few announcements also from the build before we go to the demos and real stars of today. I just wanted to make sure that everybody is up to date on what did we announce in build. First of all, the meeting applications is a big, huge bet from Microsoft sites related on Teams extensibility. And the shared stage integration is available now in preview. And this is really around the fact that you can have an application which takes the full screen, and then you're able to collaborate or present or use whatever your solution is actually doing between all of the attendees. Of course, if you take advantage of the Fluid framework, you can at the same time draw and collaborate really nicely in the shared stage integration option in the Microsoft Teams. This is already available in preview. So if you go to the Teams Dev Docs, which is the platform documentation for Microsoft Teams, you can easily get additional information how to set it up. It's basically just an attribute for the meeting application configuration, well, technically Teams tab configuration in the manifest, which will then set up the behavior to be available. But really, really cool options over there. Now, some other new things. Maybe not necessarily directly for developers as such, but kind of a cool thing as well, is that you can actually now start building your own Together mode options. So there's the Together mode extensibility coming this summer. I think we already have the building tools, but we don't actually expose these custom layouts yet in the Microsoft Teams. So that's right, that's the missing piece. But what we can do with this one is that you can upload your own image, and then you can basically set where the meeting attendees will be placed, and then you're able to publish that to be available as a Together mode option in the Microsoft Teams meeting. So really, really cool setup as well. This has been requested for quite a few times, and I heard about the Muppets show and a few other scenarios what people have been testing with this one. On the Build 2021, we also announced a private preview related on Fluid components and Fluid components in Microsoft Teams, which is now available for a subset of our customers and partners. And this is something where we can sign up for the private preview or trying to get to the private preview using AKMS code with Fluid is the URL. But basically what it means is that the Fluid framework is really the easiest way to collaborate in the real time between multiple meeting attendees, or sorry, that in this case, Teams chat attendees or multiple people. And you can real time see what the other people are doing on that Fluid component. So in this case, the Fluid component is in the Teams chat, and we can see the same Fluid component in both the mobile client and in the desktop client. And as we are adding content, modifying the content, everybody is seeing those changes in real time. I still remember we had quite a long time actually ago, a dev kitchen related on this feature in Redmond with our partners. That was before the weird 2020 year. There was such a cool amount of solutions being built throughout the 3 to 4 days as we were piloting this together with our partner ecosystem. So really, really looking forward on what are the different scenarios people are using this within their solutions. A few more reminders from the build. Adaptive cards for Microsoft Teams tabs available in preview. And this is really around the fact that the UX layer in the Microsoft Teams application can be built using adaptive cards. So you'll have a bot behind the scenes, which is then reacting those actions in these adaptive cards, but you don't technically need to build HTML or CSS or any complex UX layer because you'll take advantage of the adaptive card capability within the Microsoft Teams. Really, really cool as well. And then something which we'll see a demo later today from Xenia is the Microsoft Teams Toolkit, which is V2, is now available for Vesa Studio Code for preview. If you go AKMS Teams Toolkit, that will actually put you in the marketplace, in the Visual Studio marketplace, and you can easily install that to be then available for your Visual Studio. Or technically, you'll actually be in the Visual Studio Code and to the extensions, then you find the solution and get it installed. But it's really, really cool integrated development experience. What Xenia is going to show today supports SharePoint Framework as the UX layer or Azure as the UX layer. If you're more familiar with the backend implementation than the web stack development, which would be the SharePoint Framework side of the house. But it's really cool that we have this integrated way of doing things directly in the tool. And a final preview, our reminder from the Microsoft Build 2021 is the Microsoft Teams Developer Portal, which is now available also in preview. More documentation on this one in AKMS Teams Dev Docs. But idea here is that you have one website which is signed where you sign in towards your tenant, and then you can easily manage your application. You get more insights on the application usage, which is in preview. You can actually, from here, you can build those custom Together mode extensions and all of that. So really, really, really cool capabilities as well. Now, time is flying when you are having fun. So let's do a quick group photo with those who are willing to enable the video. So we're going to capture that. I will start my recorder for those. For those who have joined some of our calls know how this works. I will actually put that one over there. I will set the recording on and wait for a few seconds. Let's see if we can get all of the 50 seats taken. Let's wait a few more seconds. We're filling up. We're filling up. We're filling up. We're filling up. That's really, really fast. Let's see. I will enable my video. I think that's in maxing out. And let's do some hand waving as well. Oh, I even got to the video. Excellent. Thanks, everybody. This is almost the same thing as seeing each other in the conferences, right? Well, maybe later this year we'll be actually seeing each other in some of the conferences across the world. Thanks, everybody. Great. We're going to capture a GIF animation out of that as well. And let's then go to the real stars of today. And we'll start with Sebastian Levert around his sample on a Kudos apps using a Teams activity feed API in Microsoft Graph.
Awesome. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. I'm quite excited today to show you a little bit of a sample that I've been building to help some of the partners we're working with utilizing the activity feed in Microsoft Teams. My name is Sebastian. I am a senior program manager on the Microsoft Graph. I used to be a hardcore developer turned into a product manager. So I'm still, and that's why I love to do these samples here to kind of stay connected to the technology, stay connected to developing. I've been a long-time community member, awarded MVP 6 times, and now I am working on the Microsoft Graph team as part of Microsoft to help partners and customers take advantage of Microsoft Graph as the API gateway to all of your Microsoft 365 data. A little bit of history here on why we came up with this small sample that I'm going to show today. First, Microsoft has been amazing to help building engaging apps via tabs, bot, personal apps, messaging extensions, all of these different capabilities that are offered within Microsoft Teams haven't been extremely useful. But there was always one thing that was missing, which was to catch the attention of the users through the great activity feed that Microsoft Teams always had. The Microsoft Graph have been providing capabilities to add notifications to the user's activity feed for potentially around 6 to 9 months in beta. But now we're happy that it moved onto the V1. So now it's a fully supported workload. And we love this feature because it really creates a sticky app that people can come on and off of it. So that's really, really cool. So what will we do today? What will be kind of our scenario? First, we will create a new app leveraging any type of app you want to use within Microsoft Teams, either using the Teams Toolkit, using SharePoint Framework, using the PnP Teams generator called YoTeams, or even if you have your own in-house ways of building Teams apps, you can use any of that to build what we're going to have to do. We're going to use a Fluent UI to build some of the components that will be building on our interface, where we're going to see the notifications flow from one user to the other. We'll also use the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, which is a great UI connected to the Microsoft Graph. So web components pre-baked, pre-connected to the Microsoft Graph to use some of the out-of-the-box controls that it offers, including here the login control, the people picker control, but also some of its providers to be able to create some extra graph calls to, in this case, send a notification to our users. And finally, we're going to use the Microsoft Graph to send notifications to the target user. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. So let me go here. Let me do this here. And let me do this right here. There we go. So now I have an application. This application is a Kudos application, meaning that you can send to your colleagues thumbs up on the great work that they've been doing with you. So I'm logged in right now with two different browsers. On the left, the one that is a little bit lighter, there's my name right there, Sebastian, that is connected in a Teams app. On the other screen, we have Adele that is connected with our own credential in another Teams app. This here is to illustrate that you need to have two users, right, to be able to send you notifications, because you're always sending it to somebody else. You cannot send notifications to yourself. So just as a quick demo, let's say that I'm here and I want to send a message or a kudos to Adele, where I'm going to select here that she went the extra mile. Thanks for going the extra mile on that last project. Then I'm going to hit submit. While it submits the kudos, we are using the Microsoft Graph to send this information. And in, oh, that's interesting. Let me just reload my screen. My token renewal is not effective. I'm going to do the same thing with Adele at the same time. The joys of live demos are always the same. Thanks for being awesome. I'm going to hit submit. It's going to send my kudos using the Microsoft Graph to Adele. Now, Adele just received, and you see it, there's a new small notification on the bell, on the activity bell. And there's also a toast notification that you were able to see at the bottom right. And when I go see the activity, I will actually, in the notification, I will see that Sebastian sent you a kudos for extra mile with the message, thanks for being awesome. So these are the types of capabilities that you can build within your own applications to really bring people back to your application. Keep in mind that these notifications are very contextualized to where you want the user to be in Teams. So if you want to bring the user to a specific channel tab because there's something new for that user in this context, you can do it. If you want to bring your user to a personal app where you want to signify that there's something new for them, you can also do that. You want to bring somebody to a chat or to a channel conversation, all of that is fully available. We built a couple of weeks ago a full sample. So all of the code that I'm showing today is available online. I'm going to see all the links afterwards. If you're going to be able to follow with this guide, part of the Microsoft Graph mailbag, which is a series of blog posts we're making on the Microsoft Graph to help you with simple tasks with Graph, but to really enrich your apps. And if you go through this one, you can learn how to create engaging apps with the Microsoft Teams Activity Feed API. So if you follow this guy here, you will be able to find how to create apps for Teams, how to create notifications for a channel, for a chat, or any of those. But now I want to dive a little bit deeper and show you how this app is being built. Not just to show it, but I want you to see what is under the cover. First, let's start with our manifest. Each Teams app has a manifest representing the description, the title, the colors, the icons, the tabs, the bots, and everything. But since we have the activity information available now, there's also an activities area where each app can predefine which type of activity they support. And this is really important because you cannot just start sending random notifications to anybody in Microsoft Teams. That user needs to have an app. The app you're targeting needs to be installed on their own Teams client, but also you have to define what are the messages. And here you see you can only send a kudos to a user. So it's a very railed experience. So that way you're not going to be able to start spamming users just for the sake of spamming. You really need to control how notifications will happen. And that is great because that really brings a sentiment of choice. And also these can be turned on or off as part of the Teams notification setting. So you can decide that you want to enable or disable some of these notifications based on how chatty they might be with you. So that's the first thing you want to do. You want to say, hey, I will be using this activity and I want Teams to react when a new activity is sent when this user has this app installed. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to actually build the app. So a couple of areas that I want to focus on here. The first one is this. This one here is how we are enabling the use of the Microsoft Graph in this app. We're leveraging Microsoft Graph Toolkit as a way to get access to our Microsoft Graph data, to authenticate ourselves. And we're also using the Graph Toolkit to define which are the permissions that I need to run my app. I'm using 3 permissions here that are related to the login control and to the people picker. So if I go back to my app here and I look at here, the people picker is this one and the login control is this one on the right. So these are the permissions, these ones here are the permissions that are used to kind of run my UI. Yet 2 other permissions are permissions that are required to be able to build my notifications. The first one is the ability to request that I want to send a Teams activity. And also, I want to be able to read all the apps that exist in the app catalog. So that way, I can know what is the ID of the app that I want to target. So that way, we can send a notification through the right app in the end. So these are all the permissions. So automatically, when I'm going to log in, we're going to get a consent. So by Microsoft Graph Toolkit, it's going to ask me, do you allow all of these permissions? I'm going to say yes. And afterwards, I want to move on to a next section, which is this one here. So basically here, I have a very simple React built with the Fluent UI that allows me to create my provider with the right theme, all my different columns and rows that are in there. The thing that I think is the most important, right, is this one at the end, is the button. Is when I click send notification, what is happening? When I send a notification, this is where I do a lot of my Microsoft Graph calls. So let me go on the send notification right here. Looks like I'm awaiting that method here. I'm going to go right here, and it looks like I'm going to need the Graph service, which is a service that I use for connecting to Graph, which basically in that case here sends a notification. It does 2 things. The first thing, it validates that the user I'm talking with has the app installed. So it gets the app from the app catalog using this API here. So basically graph.microsoft.com/app-catalogs/Teams app, and then I just pass in what's the ID of the app that I'm looking for, which is the app that I know of, which is the app that was deployed to the users. So I can get this app ID here. And then afterwards, if I have an app, so if this app was installed, I will be simply sending to the target user, the user that I selected in the people picker, I will be sending a notification using the API users/ID/teamwork/send activity notification. I'm going to send a post message where I'm going to have a topic. First, the topic is of type text. The value is either the name of the category. In that case, I selected extra mile, or if I don't select one, it's going to be called just Kudos App. And a URL. The URL is where, when I click on the actual notification, where am I redirected? And that's why when I click on the notification, I was brought back directly to my app. So if I go here, for instance, and I go back to my activity here, when I click, it actually loads my app because it knows exactly what's the app ID, what's the tab name, and everything. And here, I just specify what's the activity type that I want to do, what's the text, which is the message that the person did, and I'm sending it. So without a lot of lines of code, maybe a couple of, maybe 100 lines of code, we were able to build a fully working Kudos app that uses the Microsoft Graph Teams activity feed API, and we're able to have a full Teams app available right here. A couple of links you might want to have a look into for Microsoft Graph, the SDK, the Microsoft Graph SDK JavaScript, the actual PnP sample here that you can use and start building with. And finally, the blog post that I just shared earlier to get you guys running and be able to start playing around with this activity feed API. Over to you, Vesa.
Thank you, Sebastian. Awesome work. And Microsoft Graph is first of all, Microsoft Graph APIs are awesome, but then all of this abstraction which we've been able to implement on top of those APIs, like the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, is just going to speed up the development so much and make the development much easier for people. So awesome stuff. On the Graph Toolkit, by the way, just a reminder, we've been hearing this quite often that, yeah, but it's the UX isn't really good. You can change the UX on the Graph Toolkit as well. You can adjust that. There's templating mechanisms, all of that in that as well. So we just need to be provide more guidance on that as well. So it's really powerful for numerous different scenarios. Now, let's then jump to Satya and Arun, related on building a digital asset document repository management app in the Microsoft Teams.
Thanks all for joining. This particular app sample that we are going to be discussing is something that I have heard from a lot of customers, a lot of partners out there. And interestingly enough, this is inspired based on an app that we have been using internally as well. The app we have named it as a document manager. It's a repository or asset management system. The business problem or the business case that we are working with is basically we have multiple teams working together, collaborating together, and each of us create decks, we create different files, assets that are useful across everyone, but we create in silos and we have our own locations where we used to store it. And we collaborated and brought it all together into a SharePoint library. Still, there is a need for an effective way for us to search those assets from within Teams itself or within a place where we are working and having conversations. So there needs to be a way where we can effectively search and find these assets that are uploaded in this SharePoint document library. That's one business problem that we wanted to solve. The second one is it's good that if I can search and find an asset that I'm looking for, say I'm preparing for a customer meeting regarding adaptive cards. I wanted to have an adaptive cards pitch deck, and I'm able to search it and find it, and I'm able to consume it myself. That's awesome. Now, next day, a colleague of mine wants help on the same topic. How do I easily share something that I have already known, a very good asset that I already know, and I want to share the goodness with the rest of the folks on my team, right? We want to have like an easy way to do that as well. That's the second business problem or the second use case that we wanted to solve for. Now, the third one is more on the contributing back to the asset library. So far, we have been talking about this one huge repository of SharePoint document library where we have all the assets where we have all been consuming the good resources for. Now, how do we contribute assets back to the library without leaving the context of where we are working? How do you make that particular process easier? Because that's definitely a friction point for users, right? People create really good assets and they would want to contribute back to the community, but the friction point of making it easier for them will definitely increase the rate of contribution back to the asset library. So that's something that we really wanted to solve. And that's another business case that we have solved using this sample app. The last part, while it is good for the entire community to contribute back to the asset repository that we have, there needs to be some checks and balances, some owner, a repository authority who would be able to go through these assets, do a quality check, review the assets to make sure it adheres to certain standards. A governance part comes into play. So how do you make sure this governance is made easy is the last use case that we wanted to solve for. So these are the four principles around which this document management app is centered around. And let's see how this app solves these business problems, right? Now, here is a way where we have made use of messaging extensions. I'm sure you all know about messaging extensions to search for an asset which is in the document library and share it easily with users. So in this particular case, you see there is one person who is on the left side of the screen, SR, and there is another person on the right side, OB, Olo's account, and this is Satya's account, my account over here. So Satya is asking Olo if you have any assets on sales pitch that I can look at for an upcoming customer meeting, and Olo is able to quickly draw up the messaging extension for the document manager, and search for assets in this manner, and able to share it as an adaptive card in the one-on-one chat itself. And by nature of messaging extension, this would work in group chat, this will work in channel, it would work in any place wherever it is invoked. So by just bringing up a messaging extension, you have a way to query a backend SharePoint document library. Imagine this happening without this app, right? Olo would probably go to a SharePoint document library, fish through those assets, copy a link of the document, and then paste it back over here. All of that is slightly made easier in this particular process. The next part, like I mentioned, is probably like the contributing back to the asset library or contributing back to the repository. That's what you see over here. And what you have here is, again, a different user, Satya, on the left side and Olo on the right side. Satya has found, basically, like I found a particular asset really useful. I have created that, and I would really like to share it back to the repository. Again, from the same messaging extension, right, you have an action command where you'd be able to bring up a task module and have a set of like preliminary fields that you want to fill in and upload an asset, basically like upload a file that you want to share from within this task module. And for the purpose of this sample, this is a very simple task module that asks just for the name and a very short description. But you can make it even more elaborate, have more information, metadata that you can get around this particular document, and that can be used for routing it to the right person, right? So after submitting, what happens, as you can see, is after routing, what happens is, let me see, yeah. As you can see, once this document is submitted, you have an adaptive card that gets posted. On the right side, since this is a person who is approving the asset, right? Olo Brokos is someone who is an approver of this particular SharePoint document library. This is the governance piece that we talked about. This particular person would be able to see approve and reject buttons, basically has additional controls, user-specific views on an adaptive card. Whereas for the person who submitted the document, the same adaptive card just shows the view asset option. So in this way, you make use of a single channel, and this view is different based on the role or the user who is seeing the adaptive card. And this automatically happens. As soon as the card is posted, it refreshes, understands who is viewing that particular card, and changes based on the user who is viewing that particular card, and allows extra or special actions for that particular user. This is the user-specific views that was recently released by Adaptive Cards team and was covered in build, and I think it was covered in the previous community calls as well. So I wouldn't go more in depth on that, but this is something that we have implemented in this sample app. That's up to you for taking up and using it in your own apps with customers. Now, in the previous task module that you had seen, you could actually fetch more detail around the metadata of a document and route it to different owners depending on the type of document. If it's around, say, a retail industry, it should go to one particular owner. If it's in a professional services industry, it should go to another particular owner. In this way, you could have this simple sample app extended and made more specific to particular business requirements and build on top of this. Now, the same way as the adaptive card has been submitted on both sides, the approval would also work in a very similar manner, where this particular person, the approver who has the approval rights, would be able to approve or reject the asset. Definitely, they would want to view the asset and go through the document before approving, so that can also be done directly from within Teams. And once this document is approved, if you can see, the card will update. It will automatically refresh on both sides. So you can see the card is showing approved on the Olo side and for the person who has submitted as well. And since this is being submitted in a channel where other users might also be present, all of the users will also be able to see that this particular card has been approved, and they would be able to consume the particular asset, and they would be able to share it across with their colleagues if they found it useful. So this is a simple workflow of having a really good asset that's been submitted back to the document library and having a governance angle also included into it. In terms of implementation, I would request Arun to walk through how we linked the messaging extension to the SharePoint document library. Conceptually, this makes use of a staging folder in the SharePoint library where an intermediary space is allocated for the documents which are under review, and then once approved, it goes through the final destination in the library, from which it can be queried and shared across. Arun?
Yeah, before going to that such commands or a message extension, I just want to highlight why we implemented that approve concept while uploading the files. So in our previous example or in a previous sample for a B2C bot, we have not implemented that approve file concept. So someone in the community asked what is the security reason? How can they upload it? That's why using adaptive card, we implemented this approve concept. So before uploading into my main folder, we created one staging folder in that. So whatever the staging folder available, that is all pending for approval. So once approver will approve it, then it will go to the main folder. So I just want to highlight that because in my last sample in a B2C bot, we have not implemented that functionality. Now coming back to the such commands or such docs using a message extension. As Satya said, we have two folders. One is a staging folder and another one is a approved folder. So once approver approved that, then automatically, it will go to the main folder. From that main folder, using message extensions, such action commands, we are able to search that particular doc from the document section, from the folder section, and we can able to share as an adaptive card. So this is the document where we used it for that searching for a message extension, and for uploading a docs or for uploading a files, like as I explained in my previous example or a previous sample, we used a upload graph APIs. So using upload folder graph APIs, we can able to upload the files, and using this such message commands, we can able to search the files and the sections also, text also, using message extension such commands. Yeah.
Thanks, Arun. The user-specific views that I referred to earlier from adaptive cards is available in this documentation. I will share it across. This is covered extensively in the last community call as well, so I wouldn't go deep into this. One other part that didn't quite come out in the demo video because we had side-by-side screens is we have also made use of full-width adaptive cards. While it's a small announcement, but still it's a very good UI piece that I really like about this. Basically, if you have more than 3 buttons in an adaptive card, right, it can become crowded. So full-width adaptive cards to the rescue, and implementing this is extremely easy. You need to have an MS Teams width full for an adaptive card in 1.2, and you would have all the power of a full-width adaptive card. So that's something that I wanted to highlight as well. Finally, this is a sample app that is a bare bones framework, right? This is not like a full-fledged app itself. This is something that you can potentially extend for use cases, scenarios in multiple different industries. And that's what we have in the slide over here. And this is based on my interaction with customers across in different industries. I've gathered this. This is definitely list. You can use the sample app and extend it for many other purposes as well. In a professional services industry, which is probably the most straightforward one, you can share assets like client proposals, templates, pitch decks between different teams. If a particular person is preparing for a pitch for a particular customer in an industry, they would have you can even have like tag-based search in the messaging extension and be able to search, say, pitch, and it will pitch plus retail, and it will show like pitch documents for retail industry customers. So you can customize it in that manner, so it will be more useful for professional services industry customers. In finance and banking, think of this as a way where you can have a knowledge repository for brochures, policy assets, like banking products, right? Like what kind of discounts, like what kind of banking products that you can send to customers, say insurance contracts, documents that relationship managers might want to quickly search, get, and share it with the customer is something that you can build using this. In healthcare, and this is a very interesting twist to what we built, and this is something that I heard from a customer as well, doctors frequently search for information about drugs, diseases, to learn more about it, and also share that information across other doctors who comes for a second opinion. So this messaging extension need not be looked from the lens of an asset repository alone. It can even serve as a repository for all this information around drugs and diseases, SOP documents. All of this can be customized in order to suit the healthcare industry use case as well. And this is a very interesting twist that I found very recently as well. And cross-industry, it's very similar to how we have in professional services. Any kind of assets, any kind of like forms that you want to share across with different teammates, different teams, is something that you can make use of this particular sample app. So you're only limited by your imagination on how you extend the sample app and make it as a full-fledged app that can be used for your own customers. That's all from my end. Back to you, Vesa. I will take answers on the chat.
Thank you, Satya. Awesome stuff. And these samples are really, really, really powerful. They're well done, well documented, and awesome scenarios for sure. Now, the last demo of today is then Xenia from the Vesa Studio or Dev organization side related on Microsoft Teams Toolkit version 2.0. And we can see the slides. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Vesa and team. My name is Zhenya. I'm a PM who looks after the entire Teams developer experience kind of end to end. And here I want to talk to you a few minutes about the new Teams Toolkit we released at Build. It's still in preview, so there's lots more work to do, but we hope we have simplified some of the initial setup cost of creating a proof of concept type of application, where hopefully it'll be clear from my demo. You no longer have to do some of the same steps manually. Now, there's lots of great ways to create a Teams app, of course, that will continue to be true. The UAT Teams generator is one. I'm sure there are tons of other templates and samples from the community, as well as any of our own samples and templates. But here, focusing on Teams Toolkit, some of the things we've done since the previous version we released last year is we have added essentially a big simplification to your authentication setup. We've done that by kind of collecting together some of the lifecycle stages of an application into one set of commands in the toolchain. So you now get access to hosting for your custom tabs, your bots, and your Azure functions. We've integrated Azure functions into the default template. We've also helped with the Microsoft Graph integration, as well as data sources like SQL. We also make it easy to connect all of the above with SharePoint Framework, if that's your cup of tea. There is a set of commands for deploying in kind of a single step. You can deploy all of the components of your Teams application, whether it's the function, the front end, or the bots. Publishing is the same as before. You're able to submit to the Teams App Store straight from the tooling. We have a new extensibility model I'll tell you about. Also a new CLI. This should help folks who love the terminal and folks who want to integrate these things into their CI/CD flow. We also have new Blazor support as well. So we have we have an extension that you can install into Visual Studio using this extension marketplace. And it supports the Blazor app template that you can use to build a custom tab. Lots more work to do. And we've also made it easier for you to work with our some of the tunneling shenanigans you have to do when you're building a Teams bot. So that's a quick overview. I'll show you some of these in detail and show you a demo at the end of this as well. So the big, hopefully, simplification to your life when you're creating a proof of concept, or you're trying to demonstrate an idea with a Teams app, is we believe getting the user's profile information and the current SSO state shouldn't be something you have to configure, shouldn't be something you have to worry about. It should just be a single line of code. And so you'll bear with me, we've changed some of the signatures just a touch, but the real meat of this functionality is exactly the same, where once you've created an app with our template, everything is set up for you to receive the user context with one line. This works both on the client and the server, and I'll show you in the demo. Azure functions are integrated, and we kind of give it to you as a monorepo format, where your tab is sitting right next to your Azure function. This allows you to kind of share code if you want to. But here's an example of what it's like to take advantage of your single line graph integration, for example, directly from the Azure function. Microsoft Graph also integrated in a similar fashion. With a single line of code, you can generate yourself a authenticated graph client. You'll notice here we don't have to pass in any client IDs or any tokens or scopes. This uses, of course, you can modify the scopes you like if you can override those arguments, but none of the kind of standard ways of configuring this are required because we've handled calling AAD for you. We've handled the deployment after this, and so the configuration is something that's already built into the template. In terms of deployment, there's a single line command that you can use. Like I mentioned before, all the components you're using in your application, including potentially your SQL server, if that's the data source you chose to integrate through the toolkit, all of those things are provisioned and deployed in your Azure subscription for you automatically. We have our new extensibility model behind all of the commands in the toolkit and in the CLI. So some of the ones that you'll notice are available. You can scaffolding the application or building the application, running it or deploying it. All of these are lifecycle events in our extensibility system, and you're able to package. In fact, this is how a lot of the integrations for the various resources we support have been built. So you're able to package functionality that knows how to listen to these lifecycle events, and that will enable folks to kind of integrate the rest of their line of business setup. If they have an enterprise that has custom ways of doing things, this is your way to connect. I think fancy animations. We have this new Blazor template, which has all of the same kind of authentication goodness that we give you on the JavaScript side. It's currently a little bit lighter featured than the web stack, but we're hoping to invest in this and bring it to parity as well. Lots of things to do, but yep, you're able to get your user context and access to Microsoft Graph in one line of code. So I'll move on to the demo now, but you can check out the Teams Toolkit at this URL, aka.ms/teams-toolkit. And this is how you start accessing the toolkit, basically as you're used to through the extensions marketplace in VS Code. You'll notice in preview. But once you get this installed, you'll get a little icon in the activity bar here under Teams Toolkit. Here you have access to a whole bunch of things that are useful for Teams development, including, for example, a link to your Teams developer portal where you can manage apps that you've deployed. Of course, a bunch of project commands for creating a project, adding different capabilities and resources, looking at your manifest, getting your app built and published. To do the F5, of course, the big features here are also that you can instantly F5 the same way you're used to any application. So I'll show you that in a second. Here, let me show you what it's like, how quick it is to create a project. When I make a new project, I basically follow a few prompts, just like you're used to with any template generator. So you could start with one of our new samples, or I'll just start a blank app. Here, we're planning to add more of the Teams capabilities that, as time goes on. But in preview, we have our core tab bot messaging extension choices. You can pick any of these to put together into your application. So just for simplicity, I'll show you the first one for now. You can choose how you plan to host. In this case, we have options. We can host with Azure or SharePoint framework. I'll pick Azure. You can throw in a SQL database. We'll help you run a local database when you run locally in F5, and we'll help you, of course, provision that database in Azure. For now, I'll just throw in an Azure Function app because I want some server-side code. Pick my programming language of choice. Of course, TypeScript is mine. It's going to ask me to place my new project into a folder. And I'll give it a name. And so what this does is it restarted with looking at the folder that I just created. You can see here, this is the Visual Studio getting started. I don't know why this README is not loading. I think that's a funny bug we're dealing with. So you have your tabs, you have your functions, all in multiple folders together. And the neat thing you can do is, if you go into your run and debug, you can hit this button right away, and what it will do is launch Teams in Chrome. Now, I won't make you wait through the initial NPM install because that does take a couple of minutes, and we do a whole bunch of things in the background to get you started, including calling into Azure AD, making sure you have app ID registrations with the appropriate SSO setups, So lots of steps to do. I'll just skip to kind of an application I've already got running, hopefully, and if in case the demo gods will grace me today. So I've created this app just this morning. Actually, it has 3 things in it. It has the Azure function, the tab, and a bot all together. And it's currently running and debugging after I've hit the F5. And what we did is we started up a whole bunch of tasks for you here, including the tunneling solution ngrok. And for those folks who use this with bot development, you'll know that you have to kind of register with ngrok to get yourself a permanent URL. We handle updating that URL for you with the free account. We started up your backend and front-end services and attached to a number of them for debugging. And I believe the Teams client disappeared on me. I'll try reloading and see if that works. But the idea is once you've started your app, we start up this browser. And once you log in, you are able to see your app and debug it. I might just give it another kick there. Close the browser stops my debugging session, and this should be a lot faster to restart since I have done this already. Let's see how that does. So here we are updating the AED setup because potentially our ngrok URL changed. You'll notice us starting both the front end and the back end server and trying to attach to a process. Now I'm going to go hunt for a browser window on my machine here in case it pops. Here we go. So Microsoft Teams comes up with my prompt to install this application. Since to the tenant I'm in, this is a new application. I would say add to get it installed. You'll see here that it knows it's going to give me a tab, a bot, and a personal app. And once I do that, it pops me into the app. As you can see, I have those features available here. So looking at the tab, for example, this sample demonstrates awareness of your SSO token, obviously, as well as Microsoft Graph. We show you, the single line auth flow. Of course, this is all, reloading in real time. So if I want to go in here and make some changes, and I sort of save that, and I go back to this, it's pretty quick to rebuild. We're using the Create React App template, so the incremental build is fairly quick. We've also attached, so if you are interested, you can debug both the front end and the back end just by setting a breakpoint here in VS Code. I'll reload this page inside here and hopefully hit that breakpoint. And here it is. Same debugger as you're used to. You have all your locals in state. I'll just let this thing go. Of course, it's going to re-render lots of times. We have a bot as well, of course. Here, it is also running and being tunneled into, and I believe I can say hello. Whoops. I believe I can say hello or info. I think it tells me, yep, this is just a very basic intro. It wants me to say, and it returns, the adaptive card, and you can say, yeah, give me my profile. And we've set everything up for the notorious bot SSO flow for you. So you'll see here that is currently happening. I didn't have to do anything special beyond just scaffolding the project and hitting F5. So I never went to Azure, I never went to AAD portal, and nor the bot service. We've set everything up for you. So here we are calling the graph and getting your profile information. And of course, if I want to change this stuff, on the server, here's what it looks like. In my Azure function, I grab my access token, I create a behalf of user credential, and I'm able to get the user info directly from that and return that. Or I'm able to go use that in my Microsoft Graph generator, pass in some scopes, and then make regular Graph API calls in kind of a single line statement here. So we're getting close to time here. So I'll leave you with kind of a call to go try the toolkit. Let us know on Stack Overflow any questions you have, any trouble you have running, file issues on GitHub at this URL I've given you here, aka.ms/Teams Toolkit should take you to the extension marketplace where the GitHub repo should be easy to find. Folks, thank you so much, and I'll turn it back to you, Vesa.
Excellent, Xenia. Really, really awesome stuff, and it's great to see how the toolkit has evolved, and it looks really, really, really smooth. I love the fact that it handles the back end at the same time as the front end and the bot, so it's really, really makes the development easier for sure. Now, as we are slightly over the time, which is not that rare, let's actually close up. So thank you, Sebastian, Satya, Aaron, and Xenia. On that one, please do keep us the feedback coming in the chat or in the other channels or Stack Overflow for the Teams side as well. And the recording will be available in 24 hours in our Microsoft 365 community YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter in Microsoft 365 Dev, and then the community Twitter account M365 PnP. Now, we do not have a July monthly community calls for Teams and SharePoint and Graph in July because of the summer break, but we will keep on executing our Thursday 7 a.m. Pacific time calls throughout the summer. There will be Teams development covered in those as well. Check the follow us on social media to understand what's always on the agenda. We start pushing out the agenda already a few days before the calls. There's quite a few calls available. We're still kind of having a discussions on which of these calls will get fully merged to the Tuesday one, but at least that will be Microsoft Teams and SharePoint, and then Microsoft Graph starting from end of August. And we'll update all of this information in the blog post and in the social media with new updated invites quite soon as well. But that's it for now. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for the presenters, and stay safe. Have a great rest of the week, and let's stay in touch. Bye-bye.